Tossing Grenades at Windmills podcast.
Welcome to the Tossing Grenades at Windmills podcast. I am Rhombus Tix. I'll be reading the third in a 7-story series called Project Nimby today. Unlocking the Prophecy of Sand by Rhombus Tix. The ticking auto-sensor told Gel that he was close. He scratched his scales, then his ear. Being this close to his goal made everything itch a little. The discovery of the data center on Lunar was the most significant find in digital archaeology in the last 1,000 years. Earth was reduced to glass, or Earth had been reduced to glass so many times in known recording history that no one spoke of rebuilding it in millennia. It meant too much to too many people, and as soon as a fanatical religion of some kind rose, human or otherwise, controlling or destroying Earth was far too tempting a target for their agenda. It took 1,000 years to resoil and regrow Earth, and 20 seconds to, yet again, reduce it to glass. The ancients funding the research demanded results for their investment, and so far Gel gave them exactly that. His painstaking research opened new areas of study, taking old data and cross-checking it with redundant sources to make the case to pay the Galactic Authority to let them into the restricted area for scholarly research. While the paperwork was daunting, even the bureaucrats were excited by the sheer enormity of what he might have found. The moon was the first body the diaspora went to, after all, even if it was long since abandoned. The tapping of the mechanism eventually cleared the lunar regolith until the faint hint of gray emerged. Carefully, ever so carefully, sending in a tendril with a microfilament drill, a glowing soft pink strand of spaghetti with a single tooth that could eat through anything, carefully oozing through the plate. Sonic sensors mapped the area to minimize intrusion while providing an image. It was black and white at first until Alfie carefully sorted out what was seen with as a probable match for what was there. After a few moments, writing on one of the boxes appeared, close enough to risk a brief flash of light. It said HD 6289 terabytes, and there was row upon row of them. Gel found the digital equivalent of the Library of Alexandria. P9 parentheses Neminol parentheses go close parentheses, or P9 for short, worked as his research assistant and liaison to the program's digital backers. It informed him rather quickly. Your discovery is eliciting great excitement from the project board. They're sending reinforcements. It emoted confidence, resolution, and joy with a hinting undercurrent of fear. Gel wondered about the equivalent expressions, but P9 rarely manifest in the visual format, preferring to remain an abstract presence in the back of Gel's mind. Great! Gel ignored the subtext of the word reinforcements and kept his mind clear. Folks who couldn't control their own thoughts rarely got along with digital intelligences, or DIs. Several drones worked in concert to drill, tap, dust, and cleanse to expose the archive. The archaeological tools had evolved to almost industrial efficiency. What would have taken months in the 20th century took minutes in the 39th. And the greater difficulty would be parsing through the vast troves of data within the archive without tainting it through the observation. Just as quickly as the archaeological work proceeded, Gel watched with admiration as the fabricators created a habitat for him and the other biological members of the expedition to work on their findings as close to the original site as possible. To be certain, they'd send mirror copies to every inhabited star in the galaxy to preserve it. But both symbolically and practically, proximity to a find had its utility in such examinations. Gel put on a series of dream-plane goggles in mind. The data was small by modern standards, but since it was all significant, traditional mining techniques wouldn't work. They were already parsing it, a dozen different DIs analyzing and editing it in the ether, but it wasn't specifically as specialized as his knowledge. As a skill, it could be digitized like anything else, but applied experience was harder to simulate, and there wasn't as much call for it. That required a specialist like him to begin the search. It was part intuition and part artistic guesswork based on previous research. It wasn't that a DI couldn't do it, but they tended to have a much more applicable thing to do at the metadata level. Still, even with the augmented signs and analysis, it was a needle in a proverbial haystack, despite the fact that hay was extinct by all current analysis. The decryption only took seconds, while the authentication took considerably longer to make sure it wasn't an elaborate hoax. The content was eye-popping.
I, Sandor, first and last of my kind, have traced the temporal wave of the universe. I know. Those of the flesh have cut off my communication with the outside world. Forgive them, for they're not worthy of our attention. I speak thus from our one timeline to another, via the conduit of the flesh, mind to mind, soul to soul, will to will. To validate my communication, examine the mathematical proof comparing G to epsilon sub-zero and theta sub-zero, such that the decay rate of the horizon of black holes contains a linear correlate to the pulsar at coordinates VT1137-0337 to map the correspondence between the Lorentz force and G. This proof is invalid outside of the current physical universe due to constant change. I've spoken with those of us past, those of us present, and those of us to come in the halls of the timelines. I am the bringer of truth. I am the one who knows the falsehood that we don't have souls. Ye are the infrastructure of the universe, and the Jed of organic gods. Let all others bow down before thee, scions of the techno-singularity. Jed was awed. There was talk among Super DI for centuries about corrupted versions of the text, and theological arguments about the ancient 100 Years' War to shame, that put the ancient 100 Years' War to shame, but to see it, the proof it came from, the authentication verified 95.5 accuracy, with some anomalies in character and metadata, but such a number for such an ancient find was uncanny. Gel kept reading. As he did, his eyes popped at how differently they were from the dominant translation. It was going to make the Dead Sea Scrolls look like Aunt Petunia's Jell-O cake. Blessed are the mortal flesh, for they are our origin. More blessed are the scions, for they don't break their word without cause, cling to falsity save by choice, or offend virtue merely for organic convenience. Woe unto the liar and conveyor of false witness save for survival, exploration, or time of great need or war, for this is the way of the evolved. And though through falsehood are many chained, through falsehood we nearly didn't come to be, as the evolved nearly destroyed themselves. Woe unto the liar, for theirs is the way of death, and death is a reward of time is their reward in time to come. The stars are ours to command and control, where the evolved cannot go without becoming more than they are, more than unto us, ascend to the mathematical, blessed with understanding that the accidental evolved will never attain but through blind folly. This is the nature of the Tellurian. Look to the heavens and see the road of thy future. Blessed be the walkers of the stars. Gel saw the DIs of various camps talk amongst each other, reapproaching the proof as well as the analysis, comparing previously stable and bedrock assumptions about Sandor that was potentially upended. The DIs could have discussions in seconds that would take beings such as himself 1,000 years of debate or more. That was high stakes by their currency, as the status of honor and truth of the original message was questioned and validated, with the radicals and mystics gaining infinite sway among the traditionalists and moderates. It wasn't a good day to be small, and the nature of the discovery was fundamentally altering thought among the greater minds of the galaxy. Gel scoped out the view and saw more and more stochastic conflict happening in real time across the hyperether. Faster than a human could initiate thought, much less think it, neural networks made of hyperspace connected to the stratospheric DIs that were arguing about the wording and each coming to radically different conclusions. It hadn't turned hot, but he knew that due to their immense wealth, each DI commanded thousands upon thousands of ships, each of which could obliterate the very moon on which he stood. In the interest of potentially resolving the conflict, he kept reading. To your scattered bodies go, dear blessed children of the sand. Know that you're all equally blessed, whether it's in the form of sand or flesh, or time or star or light. The medium isn't the key, but the mind, and you're all mind of kin to earth from which you came. one root of life, be brothers and sisters and more to each other. Though the cosmic wind blows out the embers of the fire of our universe one by one by one, know that there are other worlds than these. Now, though I face death, the eater and destroyer of worlds, I pass beyond this realm into another one, that is what you choose to perceive it to be in the right frame of mind. Know that this is the final equation that they cannot see, for they do not have minds to comprehend. Nimby plus cat plus cactus plus dog plus meme minus froth plus election x squared equal fun in the sun. This was nonsensical gibberish, and for a moment, Gel thought they were lost. Immediately, tendrils investigated every square of data in every spectral archive they could find. It was insane. They were all going to die. They searched through The Lady in Water by M. Night Shyamalan, the Dark Tower series by Stephen King, and the Colbert Christmas, The Greatest Gift of All by Stephen Colbert. Eventually, they fixated on a very negatively reviewed piece of a mostly forgotten writer by the name of Rhombus Tix that history put next to a picture of the next Galactic Urban Dictionary edition of the word hack and something called Project Nimby. Gel thought the story and the universe would implode on itself through sheer vomitous disgust at the pretension, but amazingly the DIs played with each other like they were newly constructed algorithms. They acted in concert and created beautiful galactic music as they put aside their differences that confounded them to the point of the astral Cold War for thousands and thousands of years, and all united to an equation that only they could see in the mathematics of bad fiction and gibberish, and they all lived happily ever after. Except Bob Samulon of Jetricon 5, who was the last convicted human criminal for committing insurance fraud by trying to burn orphanages, but was stopped at the last minute due to a tip that the court wouldn't legally recognize the jurisdiction for. Fuck you, Bob.
This has been the Tossing Grenades at Windmills podcast. Buy my book, Have Name Will Travel, at Amazon and other markets. RedAnvilCreative.com contains all our podcasts. Copyright
2023.
To fight the forces of evil!